Dear listeners, before starting the story, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. Your subscription motivates me to make quality content for you. I also ask you to share your opinion about the story in the comments, that's all. Enjoy listening. Part 1. A Stable Life. My name is Robert Williams. I've lived in Chicago for most of my 50 years. The Windy City has been the backdrop for my life, with its bustling streets, towering skyscrapers, and the constant hum of activity. I've always appreciated the city's energy and diversity, believing it was the perfect place to build a life. I met my wife Karen when I was 42, and she was 39. We were both well established in our careers. She was a financial analyst at a major firm, and I was working as an architect. Our connection was immediate, and a year after meeting, we got married in a small ceremony at the Chicago Botanic Garden. We settled into a comfortable life. We bought a house in Lincoln Park, a nice neighborhood with tree-lined streets and good schools. We had 2 children, Jake and Emily, and life seemed to be on track. Karen's career continued to rise, and I was doing well at my job too. We faced the usual ups and downs of married life, but I believed we were solid. I thought we were happy. Part 2. The First Signs. Things began to change about 3 years ago when Karen's company merged with another financial firm. She got promoted to a senior position, which came with increased responsibilities and longer hours. Initially, I was thrilled for her. She had worked hard and deserved the recognition. But as her work demands grew, so did her absences from home. I tried to be supportive. I took on more household duties and spent more time with the kids to help Karen balance her new role. However, the more I adjusted, the more distant she became. She started coming home late, often after the kids were asleep. When I asked her about it, she assured me it was just the nature of her job. I wanted to trust her. I really did. But there were subtle changes that I couldn't ignore. Karen became secretive about her phone, dressing up more than usual, even for regular office days, and she began to take more business trips. These trips often came up last minute and lasted longer than originally planned. Part 3. Discovering the Truth. The truth revealed itself on a cold November night. Karen had left for what she said was a business trip to New York. She was supposed to be gone for 4 days. That evening, after tucking Jake and Emily into bed, I noticed Karen's work tablet on the kitchen counter. She must have left in a hurry. Against my better judgment, I opened it. I wasn't looking for anything specific, but a part of me needed reassurance. What I found instead was a series of emails and messages between Karen and a colleague named Mark. Their conversations were flirtatious, personal, and it was clear this was more than a professional relationship. My heart pounded as I read through their exchanges. They had been seeing each other for months, meeting up during business trips and late nights at the office. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. Part 4. Confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, replaying the last few months and wondering how I had missed the signs. The next morning, I called Karen's office to confirm her trip. Her assistant hesitated before telling me Karen wasn't due back until the following week. It confirmed my worst fears. She had lied to me. When Karen returned, I confronted her. I waited until the kids were in bed, and we sat down in the living room. I told her I knew about Mark and the affair. She looked shocked at first, then defensive. She tried to deny it, but when I showed her the emails, she broke down and confessed. She said it started as a harmless flirtation, but quickly escalated. She claimed it didn't mean anything and that she still loved me. But her words felt hollow. The trust that had been the foundation of our marriage was shattered, and I didn't know how to rebuild it. Part 5. The Aftermath. We tried to make it work. We went to couples therapy, and Karen promised to end things with Mark and focus on our family. For a while, it seemed like we might be able to salvage our marriage, but the damage was done. Every time her phone buzzed, every late night at the office, my suspicions and anger flared up again. I couldn't live like that, and deep down, I knew Karen couldn't either. A few months later, I discovered that Karen was still seeing Mark. She had broken her promise, and that was the final straw. I told her I wanted a divorce. She didn't argue. In some ways, I think she was relieved. We both knew our marriage was over. Part 6. Picking up the pieces. The divorce was messy and painful. We fought over custody of the kids, the house, and everything else that had been part of our life together. In the end, we agreed to joint custody. I moved into a small apartment not far from our old neighborhood. Starting over at 50 was daunting, but I had no choice. Jake and Emily took it hard. They were old enough to understand that something was wrong, but not old enough to grasp the full extent. I tried to be there for them, to reassure them that both their parents loved them, but it was difficult when I was barely holding myself together. Karen and I barely spoke after the divorce was finalized. She stayed in the house with the kids, and I saw them every other weekend and on Wednesday nights. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was the best I could do under the circumstances. Part 7. Moving forward. As the months turned into years, I slowly started to rebuild my life. I focused on my job, throwing myself into my work to distract from the pain. I made new friends, joined a gym, and even started dating again, though nothing serious. The wounds from my marriage were still too fresh. Karen moved on quickly. She and Mark got together officially not long after our divorce was finalized. It hurt to see her so happy with the man who had destroyed our marriage, but I tried not to dwell on it. It wasn't healthy, and I needed to focus on my own healing. I found solace in my children. They were my anchor, the reason I got up in the morning and kept going even when things seemed bleak. We created new routines, new traditions, and I did my best to be a good father to them. Part 8. The Unexpected Twist. Just when I thought I had my life back on track, fate dealt me another blow. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I was at the park with Jake and Emily. They were playing on the swings, laughing and carefree, when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me I should. The voice on the other end was one I hadn't heard in years. Mark. He sounded panicked, almost desperate. He told me that Karen had been in an accident and was in the hospital. He didn't have many details, just that it was serious, and I needed to get there as soon as possible. My mind raced as I drove to the hospital, the kids in the back seat, oblivious to the turmoil inside me. When we arrived, I found Mark in the waiting room, looking pale and shaken. He told me that Karen had been hit by a car while crossing the street. She was in surgery, and the doctors weren't sure if she would make it. Part 9. The Final Blow. We waited for hours, the longest hours of my life. The kids were scared, and I did my best to comfort them, though I could barely keep myself together. Finally, a doctor came out and told us the news. Karen had suffered severe internal injuries and hadn't made it through the surgery. She was gone. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Despite everything that had happened, despite the betrayal and the pain, I never wanted this. I never wanted my children to lose their mother. The grief hit me like a tidal wave, and I had to leave the room to avoid breaking down in front of Jake and Emily. Mark tried to talk to me, to offer some kind of comfort, but I couldn't look at him. I couldn't bear the sight of the man who had been with my wife when she died. I told him to stay away from me and my kids, and he reluctantly agreed. He looked as devastated as I felt, but I couldn't find it in me to care. All I could think about was how I was going to tell Jake and Emily that their mother was gone. Part 10. Living with the Aftermath. The weeks after Karen's death were a blur of grief and numbness. I arranged the funeral, trying to hold it together for the sake of my children. Friends and family offered their condolences, but nothing they said could ease the pain. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, one from which I couldn't wake up. I took time off work to be with the kids, to help them process their grief and adjust to life without their mother. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Jake, who was 12, withdrew into himself, becoming quiet and sullen. Emily, only 10, would cry herself to sleep every night, asking why her mommy had to go away. I didn't have any answers for them. All I could do was hold them and tell them that we would get through this together. But inside, I wasn't sure how we would. Part 11. Moving on. As time passed, we slowly started to find a new normal. I went back to work, and the kids returned to school. We talked about Karen often, sharing memories and keeping her alive in our hearts. It was painful, but it was necessary for our healing. I stayed in therapy, working through my own grief and guilt. I felt responsible for not seeing the signs of Karen's affair sooner, for not being able to save our marriage, and ultimately, for not being able to protect her. My therapist helped me understand that these feelings while natural, were misplaced. Karen's choices were her own, and there was nothing I could have done to change the outcome. For Part 12, A New Chapter. A year after Karen's death, I met someone new. Her name was Laura, and she worked at a local charity. We met at a support group for widowed parents. Laura had lost her husband to cancer a few years before, and we bonded over our shared experiences of loss and single parenthood. Laura was kind, understanding, and patient. She knew what it was like to rebuild a life after tragedy, and she became a source of strength for me and the kids. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and a deep understanding of each other's pain. Part 13, A New Beginning. Laura and I have been together for over a year now. She's become a part of our family, not as a replacement for Karen, but as a new source of love and support. Jake and Emily have grown to love her, and she's been a wonderful presence in their lives. We've created new routines, new traditions, and slowly, we're finding happiness again. The pain of Karen's betrayal and death will always be a part of us, but it no longer defines us. We've learned to live with it, to find joy in the small moments, and to appreciate the good things we have. Part 14, Looking Back. As I sit here reflecting on the past few years, I realize how far we've come. The pain of Karen's betrayal and death will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. I've built a new life for myself and my children, one filled with love, hope, and new possibilities. Chicago, with all its ups and downs, has been the backdrop for this journey. It's a city of resilience, much like me. And as I look out at the skyline, I feel a sense of peace. I've made it through the darkest times, and I've come out the other side stronger and more determined than ever. Part 15, The Future. My story is one of betrayal and loss, but also of redemption and hope. It's a reminder that even when life knocks you down, you have the strength to get back up and keep going. And that's what I'll continue to do, for myself, for my children, and for the memory of the woman I once loved. We'll keep moving forward, one step at a time, finding our way through the shadows and into the light. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes it throws you curveballs you never saw coming. But through all the pain and hardship, I've learned that it's also full of unexpected blessings. Laura and I recently got engaged, and we're planning a small wedding for next summer. The kids are excited, and for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Part 16, Reflection. In the end, my story is one of resilience and hope. It's a testament to the power of forgiveness, the strength of the human spirit, and the importance of love and family. Life didn't turn out the way I planned, but I've learned to embrace the journey, with all its twists and turns. Chicago will always be my home, the place where I faced my greatest challenges and found my greatest strength. It's a city that embodies resilience, and in many ways, it reflects my own journey. I've been through the darkest of times, but I've emerged stronger, more compassionate, and ready to embrace whatever comes next. So here I am, moving forward with hope and determination, ready to face whatever the future holds. My story is far from over, and I'm excited to see what the next chapter brings. With Laura by my side and my children as my inspiration, I know that whatever happens, we'll face it together, with love, strength, and resilience. And that, in the end, is what truly matters. Part 17, Rebuilding Trust. As time went on, I realized that rebuilding trust was one of the hardest parts of moving forward. Laura had been incredibly patient and understanding, but the scars from Karen's betrayal ran deep. I often found myself questioning Laura's intentions, doubting her sincerity, even though she had given me no reason to. We talked about it often. Laura encouraged me to be open about my fears and insecurities, and she did her best to reassure me. It wasn't easy, but slowly, I started to trust again. I learned that it wasn't about forgetting the past, but rather about accepting it and choosing to believe in the goodness of the present. Part 18, New Challenges. Life continued to throw challenges our way. Jake and Emily were growing up fast, and with adolescence came a whole new set of issues. Jake in particular struggled with anger and resentment. He had never fully processed Karen's death, and it manifested in troubling ways. He got into fights at school, his grades dropped, and he withdrew even further. I tried to be there for him, to let him know he wasn't alone, but it was hard to break through the walls he had built around himself. We started family therapy, which helped to some extent. The therapist suggested that Jake needed a male role model, someone he could look up to and confide in. I realized that despite my best efforts, I had been too consumed with my own grief to fully support him. Part 19. Reconnecting with family. In an effort to help Jake, I reached out to my older brother Sam. He lived in a suburb outside Chicago and had always been close to Jake when he was younger. Sam was more than willing to step in and spend time with Jake, taking him fishing, to baseball games, and just hanging out. Slowly, Jake began to open up to him. Emily, on the other hand, was thriving. She had found solace in her friends and extracurricular activities. She joined the school choir and started taking art classes. Her resilience was a constant source of inspiration for me. Watching her find joy and passion despite everything that had happened gave me hope. Part 20. The wedding. As our wedding day approached, Laura and I decided to keep it simple. We wanted it to be a celebration of love and family, a testament to our journey and the new beginnings we were embracing. We chose a small venue by Lake Michigan, inviting only our closest friends and family. The day was perfect. The weather was warm, the sky clear, and the atmosphere filled with love and laughter. Jake walked Laura down the aisle, and Emily was our flower girl. Seeing them so happy and involved in the ceremony brought tears to my eyes. It was a day of healing and joy, a symbol of how far we had come. Part 21. Blending families. Blending our families came with its own set of challenges. Laura had a son from her previous marriage, a 15-year-old named Alex. He was a good kid, but the dynamics of merging two families weren't always smooth. There were conflicts and adjustments, but over time, we found our rhythm. We made it a point to have family dinners every night, to spend weekends doing activities together, and to create new traditions that included everyone. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Slowly, we became a cohesive unit, supporting each other and growing together. Part 22. Career changes. A year into our marriage, I decided to take a leap of faith and start my own architecture firm. It was something I had always dreamed of, but had never had the courage to pursue. Laura was incredibly supportive, encouraging me to follow my passion. Starting the business was challenging. There were long hours, financial uncertainties, and moments of doubt, but it was also immensely rewarding. I felt a renewed sense of purpose and excitement about my work. Laura's unwavering belief in me was a constant source of motivation. Part 23. Health scare. Just when things seemed to be settling into a good place, life threw us another curveball. Laura was diagnosed with breast cancer. The news hit us hard. It felt like we had just started to find our footing, and now we were faced with another battle. Laura approached her diagnosis with strength and determination. She underwent surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. Throughout it all, she remained positive, focusing on the future and her plans. Her resilience was awe-inspiring. She faced each day with courage and grace, never letting the illness define her. We rallied around her, offering support and love. The kids stepped up in ways that amazed me. Jake, who had struggled so much after Karen's death, became a pillar of strength for Laura. Emily, with her nurturing nature, was constantly by Laura's side, helping in any way she could. Epilogue. Embracing the future. The future is always uncertain, but it's also full of possibilities. I embrace it with open arms, ready to face whatever comes my way. With the love and support of my family, I know that we can overcome any obstacle and achieve great things together. This is my story, one of love, loss, resilience, and hope. It's a reminder that no matter what life throws at you, you have the strength to get through it and come out stronger on the other side. And that in the end is what truly matters, is what truly